welcome back to this week's McInnes Marketing Minute. Jay, welcome back. Your blazer is not maroon, it's blue, first and foremost. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's been bugging me all day, even though you keep saying it's maroon.
This is a deep Swedish maroon.
No.
The finest of all maroons.
But on the cards today is a problem bigger than what color your blazer is.
Slightly, unfortunately, yes.
As some of you may have seen on social media, it came to light this week that they are discussing putting a toll on core Vancouver.
And it's not when I first heard this, I assumed like Granville Street Bridge, Burroughs Street Bridge, Canby, somewhere in Strathcona and Lionsgate.
So the reason they stopped doing that is because they said everyone would just divert all along down Main Street and Quebec. They would just flood that area. But
fair enough, but they've massively widened the perimeter.
So the perimeter,
which we're going to put up right here.
Okay, so for any of you just listening, the perimeter to the west side is Herard.
We're too far in now to reset here.
To the south, to the south is 16th, and then to the east is Clark.
Yeah, so what about all the streets in between? Just gate them? Like, it's way harder. Well, anyway.
And then, of course, if you're coming across the Lionsgate as well, you're also going to get told. So that's the area, and it's basically it's come to light. There was a 371-page document that...
How they get 371 pages out of this is a whole other story.
So apparently...
That's a lot of tax dollars paid for page writing. Sorry.
It was apparently TransLink that had this study carried out by an independent party.
Do we know what it cost?
No, don't know what it costs.
Secret, eh? Interesting.
And it's, from what I've read from people who are trying to look at it, it's not the most clear document either.
Not surprising.
So they had a couple of schemes that they were thinking about. And so the one that they're talking about November 3rd, next Wednesday, is putting the toll in that area discussed, with the idea of making trade more accessible. The roads are clearer and everything's able to get around a lot easier.
The articles that I read, I don't know if you read anything different. Did it mention, is this toll, did it mention any, like, just on the main roads, like anything along those lines, how it's actually going to be laid out? I didn't see any of that. No,
so what they're actually thinking is it would be just like the bridge was back when the NDP got rid of it in 2017, which is an interesting point, but the NDP
are not behind this. Interesting, yes.
Typically been against tolls.
Yeah, I'll give them that.
But it was all done by a camera system. So the camera would capture your license plate. You could set up like a monthly account with Trillo, I think they were called at the time. And yeah, it would just charge your credit card or whatever monthly. And that's how you would be told, as opposed to a specific toll bridge that you have to stop.
It'll still be very interesting to see what that perimeter looks like, but fair enough.
So they're saying on average, $5 to $8 per family a day.
And that it will be, they also stated in what I read, that it will be unaffordable for the majority of families once this gets put in to do what they currently do.
Yep.
Accessing these areas.
Well, and that's it. We don't know for sure what these figures are actually going to look like, but the whole premise of it is, of course, what we're just talking about for trade, make trade more accessible.
Bigger trucks coming into the core. Obviously, the docks are inclusive in this perimeter.
Make the streets less congested, which in turn is supposed to make it more safe, even though a study in London that they did said when the roads were clearer, people drive faster, which actually makes it more dangerous.
Which makes sense, but less idling.
Less idling and a significant amount of reduction in greenhouse gases, which I will give it to them. It will have a significant amount of reductions if it works in the same way that it has these other major cities. So in the other major cities, London, Milan, Singapore.
Real cities, yeah.
It reduced congestion by 20 to 30%, almost immediately.
Okay.
So that's a huge amount, but then the question then becomes, and that's been a lot of the basis, well, it worked in these places, why would it not work for us?
A very blind argument, in my opinion.
Well, the fact that we're even comparing London and Vancouver, it blows my mind.
The infrastructure that's in place in those real cities, those hub cities, those very populated cities, as you can get into those numbers in a second, is that there is already an infrastructure, a massive infrastructure layer there.
So to put this more so to your point that we're discussing here is, so a study was done in New York And they asked a certain segment of commuters, it was a large study as well, and they said, could you easily get into work taking public transit, and why do you commute? And the majority of people can easily get into work taking public transit. It doesn't make it any more difficult. They just prefer to drive.
Well, the subway system there is amazing.
Because they can.
Yeah.
So all of these cities, my favorite saying, have the Rolls Royce of public transit. Now your favorite saying. So, and one of the reasons why I say how we can't compare ourselves, because so Vancouver, 2016, the latest official census said that we had a population of just over 631,000. Okay.
At what, 1% of your growth since then, you were saying, roughly?
It was 1.1%, so let's just round us up to 750,000.
Yeah, in core Vancouver.
Yeah, let's just weigh us up to 750,000. London has a population of 8.93 million. And Singapore has a population of like 5.86 million. So we barely have 10% of these numbers. And on top of that, to put this in perspective, because one of the big arguments was accessibility in this. So they want to do it because they feel that the core area of Vancouver is easily accessible by transit. So they want people to start taking public transit.
Which is a joke of a comment, but anyway.
Well, first and foremost, public transit, and I think you ask any commuter right now, is extremely over busy.
Yeah, because they're all
extremely packed. If you ask anyone who's running late who hasn't left it enough time to get onto a train, they'll tell you how they're like pressed up against the sides. So there's that. There's also, so London overall, the city is much smaller than Vancouver. I mean, the UK fits into Alberta, like 2.5 times, something like that. They have 270 tube stations underground to get you in and around just the city of London. Okay? Total SkyTrain stations that we have in Vancouver is 53, with 10% of the population, servicing a much wider area. Because most people right now, if you're in Abbotsford or Langley, you're waiting for that extension to finally go ahead. But you have no other choice but to drive, unless you want to catch a multitude of buses.
Even pre-doing the Broadway line to UBC. If you're at 41st in Dunbar, 16th in Dunbar, you're taking buses, B-lines. So it's and you try and get onto those, as you're saying before, in peak hours, beginning and end of day with schools and people getting to work, you're waiting.
Well, that's it. So again, that's part of the problem. The next thing that we move on to is the timing.
Yeah.
So
right now.
You remember when they said it was supposed to be launched?
In the 2020s. So let's say 2025.
Okay, I think it was mid-2020s as well.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully everything is all said and done with COVID and everyone is back to normal and the world has resumed normalcy. But right now, is it the time to be having that conversation? Because essentially this is a new tax.
For sure. So they figure the cost is $500 million to implement and put it in place.
Yep.
Which we can assume will run over that.
Yep.
So yeah, is it a time for a new tax? Now, one of the little carrots is that once this is implemented, this will give them the new tax base for this green initiative to remove, just pluck a small little 17-cent per liter tax off of gas.
Which is never going to happen. They never remove taxes.
Of course, so don't be fooled by that little carrot.
The idea is also from that funding is to increase the accessibility to SkyTrains, input more lines, stations, and whatnot as well. But the difference is here is you're now running from behind because you're trying to catch up with the demand. Places like London, Milan, etc. They already have that infrastructure in place to manage that. We don't. And I can imagine it being a complete and utter disaster.
And it's fine, and Vancouver is doing what they're doing, and I can't say if it's being done too slowly or efficiently enough, but they are building infrastructure, which they should. Mm-hmm. But when you're comparing to cities that have world-class infrastructure in place already, you just can't. It's not a valid point of reference whatsoever.
So a note on, so let's go back to that, a note on what the impact will be. So they did a study in the UK, in London, and they did it on John Lewis. So John Lewis, for everyone's reference, is just like Hudson's Bay. You can go there and get a lot of variety. So they saw, over the course of a year, they saw a reduction of 9% in sales.
Yes.
Okay, and real estate.
Once that was done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Real estate saw a reduction of 19% on average. Arguably, that could be even worse for Vancouver because London is a place that you have to go to. You
and
have
can
to
still
go to.
easily be accessed.
Yeah, and so it can easily be accessed, and a lot of people just have to go there. You don't have everything in place in London in all of these surrounding suburban areas. Vancouver doesn't have that drive and have that appeal, and I think we would agree that most people come into Vancouver for work. So now with people working from home as well.
Yes, if again this new everyone wants to and is going to be able to work from home trend stays long term.
Yeah.
Because once all the fluff, for lack of better words, around the virus is gone, let's hope by another couple years at most, everything is just done, we're past it and over it, and all those big corporate leases are still in place. Have they allowed everyone to just pile out of these buildings, which they've entirely built their businesses around, to just work from home because everyone said we should now?
That's it.
I don't think so, personally. So I don't think that's another...
There's the argument as well that it's already too expensive to live in Vancouver as it is. So adding this additional tax
For sure.
is becoming quite challenging. So we're going to have to see how the vote pans out next week, see what gets said. We want to know your thoughts. So let us know if it's something that you think if it's a good idea or if you think it's a bad idea. And we will see you next week, hopefully when we have a result by that time.
We will. Bye-bye.